Have you ever looked out at your snow-covered garden plot and thought, it's just lying there completely useless? Well, what if I told you that every single snowdrift holds the potential for a bumper harvest next season? But there's one catch. One tiny mistake in handling this white treasure can turn it into a silent killer for your plants. And most of us make this fatal error without even realizing it. In this video, we're going to break down absolutely everything you need to know about snow in your garden. We won't just cover the benefits. We're going to reveal 30 secrets and techniques that will turn you from a simple gardener into a true snow wizard. You'll learn how snow protects, feeds, waters, and even heals your soil. Plus, we'll reveal the critical mistakes that can undo all your hard work. Ready to uncover the truth hidden beneath those drifts? Let's dive in. Before we jump into the specific techniques, let's take a minute to look at the fundamental nature of snow. What exactly is it from the perspective of physics and agroscience? Why did our ancestors say, snow on the fields means bread in the barns? It all comes down to its unique structure. Every snowflake is a complex ice crystal, but when they fall and settle on the ground, a huge amount of air gets trapped between them. Up to 95% of the volume of fresh snow is simply air, locked into tiny pockets, and this air is precisely what makes snow one of the best natural insulators in the world. It works like a down blanket, or the high-tech insulation in your walls. Under just an 8-inch layer of snow, the soil temperature can be 18 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than the air temperature above it. This creates a stable, protected microclimate, a true winter sanctuary for your plant's roots. The roots won't freeze to death during harsh frosts, nor will they suffer from wild temperature swings during thaws. Understanding this simple principle allows us to start utilizing snow, not as a natural disaster we simply have to wait out, but as a powerful, completely free tool for improving fertility and protecting our garden. This is the foundation, the key to understanding all the techniques we'll cover next. So let's kick things off by discussing the fundamental role of snow, its incredible ability to act as the perfect natural insulator. Picture a harsh winter night. The temperature plummets to -20, -30 degrees Celsius. An icy wind cuts through everything in its path. On bare, unprotected ground, the soil freezes many dozens of centimeters deep. In these conditions, the root systems of most perennials, especially those that aren't native to your region, are doomed. Roots are delicate, vital organs, and when ice crystals form in the soil, they rupture the cells from the inside out. It's like leaving a tropical flower out in the frost. The result is predictable. Now imagine the same scene, but the ground is covered with a layer of fluffy snow, maybe 6 to 8 inches deep. As we've established, this layer is 90% trapped air. It creates an impenetrable barrier against the cold. Beneath this white duvet, the soil temperature rarely drops below -5 to -7 degrees Celsius, even if a true Arctic blast is raging on the surface. This 20-degree difference is literally the difference between life and death for your roses, strawberries, hydrangeas, and countless other garden favourites. Snow cover doesn't just warm things up, it stabilises the temperature. It smooths out those sharp swings. For instance, the air might warm up to freezing point during a sunny day, only for a hard frost to hit again at night. These temperature roller coasters are actually more dangerous for plants than consistent cold. They cause premature waking, which then kills the tender new buds that have started to emerge. Snow, thanks to its mass and thermal capacity, prevents the soil from cooling down too quickly or heating up too rapidly. It maintains an even, steady temperature, allowing your plants to remain in a state of deep, healthy dormancy all winter long. A perfect example is the winter garlic patch. Planted in the fall, it gets established, but must not sprout until spring. Bare, frozen ground can easily kill the bulbs, but under a thick blanket of snow, the garlic thrives. It is safely protected, waiting for its moment to emerge in the spring with vigorous, strong shoots. Therefore, your primary task during winter is to ensure that your most valuable plantings are securely covered by snow. This isn't just a gardening preference, it is a necessity for the survival of your garden. Let's pinpoint exactly which plants critically rely on a snow blanket for survival and how to properly set up this winter protection. We're talking about protecting perennials and biennials, the plants that remain dormant outside through the winter months. Topping this list without a doubt are roses, especially modern sensitive varieties like hybrid teas and floribundas. Their root crown, or the graft union, is the most vulnerable spot, and it absolutely must be insulated by snow. Before the hard frosts arrive, they are usually hilled with soil or peat. Then, once the snow falls, we pile a large fluffy drift right over that mound. It is crucial that the snow is loose and airy, not packed down or compressed. Only fluffy snow retains its full insulating properties. Our next important candidate is the garden strawberry. Their flower buds, which will produce next year's crop, are set in the fall and winter right at ground level. If the strawberry bed is left exposed by harsh winter winds, you risk losing a significant portion of your harvest. As soon as the snow settles, make the effort to grab a shovel and pile it onto your strawberry patches. A layer of 20 to 30 centimetres will provide perfect protection. Fall-planted crops like winter garlic and onion sets also absolutely love a cosy, snowy duvet. The snow not only protects them from freezing solid, but also provides essential moisture in the spring to kickstart growth. Beds with fall-sown seeds, carrots, beets, dill and parsley should also be diligently covered with snow. This ensures the seeds don't freeze out and guarantees they will sprout earlier in the spring than those sown later. We shouldn't forget about ornamental perennials either. Hostas, astilbes, daylilies and peonies all benefit greatly. This is particularly true for young, newly planted specimens whose root systems haven't yet had time to establish deeply. A large snowdrift over these is the best guarantee of successful overwintering. Finally, let's debunk a popular myth. Some gardeners believe that simply bending raspberry canes or rose bushes down to the ground is sufficient. But without snow cover, this method is largely ineffective. It is the snow itself that creates that essential insulating microclimate. Bare branches lying on frozen ground will still suffer from frostbite and drying winter winds. So the rule is simple. If you bend them down, cover them with snow, and the deeper the drift, the better. Let's move from discussing protection to focusing on nutrition, or more specifically, hydration. Snow isn't just frozen water. It's nature's perfect slow-release watering system, specifically designed to nourish plants. Let's compare two scenarios. Scenario 1. A winter with little or no snow. The ground freezes deeply and dries out. Then spring hits with a sudden warm-up and heavy rain showers. What happens next? The frozen earth can immediately absorb a large volume of water. As a result, most of that precious moisture just runs right off the surface, washing away the top fertile soil layer and creating streams and gullies. This is called soil erosion. The water is wasted, and it takes valuable nutrients with it. Scenario 2. It was a snowy winter, and your plot is covered in large drifts. When the spring sun starts warming things up, the snow doesn't melt instantly. It melts gradually, centimetre by centimetre, often over several weeks. The meltwater is near freezing, allowing it to seep into the soil very slowly. Crucially, the ground under a snow blanket isn't as rock-hard as exposed soil. It thaws gradually, right along with the melting snow. Consequently, every drop of that moisture goes deep into the ground, saturating the soil a metre or more down. This creates a strategic water reserve that lasts all spring, and sometimes even into early summer. Plants, especially trees and shrubs with deep root systems, gain access to this deep moisture, making them much more resilient against potential spring droughts. Melted snow water is often called living water. It has a special structure, it's free of the salts and impurities found in tap water, and is incredibly beneficial for plants. It encourages seeds to germinate and boosts biological activity in the soil. By banking snow in your garden, you're essentially performing the most effective and entirely free form of irrigation possible. A great example of this is the area around the base of fruit trees. If you pile a large snowdrift around your apple or pear tree in winter, all that water will go directly to that tree in the spring. This ensures a powerful start, active sap flow, and abundant blooming. While the water on bare ground simply runs away, your tree gets a deep, satisfying drink. It's a simple, yet incredibly effective agricultural technique. Beyond just hydration, snow plays a critical mechanical role in improving soil structure, particularly heavy clay. Gardeners with clay-heavy plots know exactly how challenging this can be. In the spring, this type of soil often compacts into a dense, impenetrable block. It cracks badly during summer droughts and forms a hard, sealed crust after rain. This makes it incredibly difficult for plant roots to breathe and develop properly. This is where the magic combination of snow and frost steps in. This entire process is essentially nature's way of tilling the soil. How exactly does it work? After turning over the soil in the fall, you intentionally leave large, chunky clods in the beds. Throughout the winter, the soil beneath the snowpack absorbs moisture. Then, as temperatures fluctuate between thaws and hard freezes, the water trapped in the soil's micropores freezes and expands. Think about how ice can burst a water bottle. That exact same process, but on a microscopic scale, happens inside every single dirt clod. Billions of tiny ice crystals literally tear apart the dense structure of the clay, breaking it down and making it looser, more granular, and well-structured. This freeze-thaw cycle, which often occurs multiple times throughout the winter under the insulation of the snow, achieves massive structural improvements that no shovel or cultivator could ever match. When the snow finally melts in the spring, you will notice that the soil in your beds is soft, crumbly, and wonderfully textured. It absorbs water efficiently and allows air to penetrate. This creates an ideal environment for plant roots and essential soil microorganisms. To ensure this process works most effectively, it is crucial not to break the soil down into fine dust when digging in the fall. Instead, leave the beds in those large, chunky clods. And throughout the winter, pile on as much snow as you can. The snow acts as insulation. It prevents the ground from freezing into one solid, impenetrable block of ice, while simultaneously providing the moisture and the temperature stability needed for those repeated freeze-thaw cycles. This is especially important for areas where you plan to sow fine seeds in the spring, like carrots, parsley, or lettuces. They require a fine, crumbly soil structure, and the snow helps create this naturally, without any extra effort on your part. It's just another perfect example of how working in partnership with nature can lead to better results with significantly less labour. Building on our discussion of moisture, let's look at how we replenish soil reserves on a broader scale. This isn't just about wetting the surface. It's about the deep hydration of the entire soil profile. Throughout the growing season, plants actively consume water while the summer sun aggressively evaporates it. By the time autumn arrives, moisture reserves in the soil, especially in the deeper layers, are frequently depleted. If we have a snowless winter followed by a dry spring, plants enter the new season facing a critical water deficit. The result? Stunted growth, small foliage, and a meagre harvest. Snowpack radically solves this problem. As previously mentioned, meltwater penetrates the soil very slowly and very deeply. It doesn't just wet the top 6 to 8 inches. It can saturate the ground to depths of 1.5, or even 2 meters. This water replenishes the soil's capillary and gravitational reserves. Think of a sponge. You can lightly dampen the surface, or you can fully submerge it until it is saturated throughout. Snow does the latter. It soaks the soil to its core. This deep reserve of moisture remains available to the roots of trees and shrubs over a long period. This is especially critical in arid regions where summer rains are sparse and unreliable. In these environments, winter snowfall is, in essence, the primary source of the entire annual water supply for the garden. Compare this to artificial irrigation. To hydrate the soil to a depth of even 50 centimeters, you need to apply an enormous volume of water. This is costly, labor-intensive, and often impractical. Snow, conversely, handles this task for free, spreading moisture evenly across the entire area with maximum efficiency. Your only responsibility is to help it accumulate where it's needed most. For instance, if you have a slope, the wind will likely blow the snow off, causing meltwater to quickly run downhill in the spring. By setting up simple snow fences or retention barriers, you force the snow to settle in a thick layer precisely on that incline. Consequently, the soil gains significantly more moisture and your plants will thrive. Finally, let's debunk the myth that early spring irrigation can replace snow. It simply cannot. While spring watering is excellent for giving plants a quick start, it fails to establish that deep, strategic moisture reserve that a heavy snowpack provides. Therefore, every single snowflake you manage to hold onto your land is a drop of water that will actively contribute to your future harvest. You might be surprised to learn this, but snow isn't just frozen water and insulation. It's also a free, environmentally friendly source of nitrogen fertilizer. It sounds like science fiction, but it's a scientific fact. So, where does the nitrogen in snow come from? Our atmospheric air is 78% nitrogen. However, in its gaseous form, it's unavailable to most plants. For plants to absorb it, nitrogen must transition into a soluble form, such as ammonia compounds or nitrates. Naturally, this process occurs during thunderstorms, when lightning strikes convert atmospheric nitrogen into oxides, which then fall to the soil with the rain. But there is another, much quieter way. As snowflakes form in the upper atmosphere and drift slowly down to the ground, they have a unique ability to capture and absorb various micronutrients from the air, including nitrogen compounds. They essentially act like tiny sponges, soaking up everything floating around them. As a result, every cubic metre of snow contains a specific amount of readily available nitrogen. While the concentration isn't as high as in commercial fertilizers, this is an absolutely free and completely natural source. Over a snowy winter, heavy snowfall can deposit between 5 and 7 kilograms of pure nitrogen per hectare of land. Even for a small private garden, that's a very noticeable boost. In the spring, when the snow melts, this nitrogen, carried by the meltwater, goes directly to the roots of the plants. This gives them the essential early boost they need for lush, green growth. This is why, after a snowy winter, the grass often looks especially emerald green and lush in the spring. In addition to nitrogen, snow also captures other beneficial micronutrients from the atmosphere, such as sulfur, calcium, and even small amounts of phosphorus. Essentially, snowmelt is a very weak but perfectly balanced nutrient solution. Forest ecosystems, which no one fertilizes, are a perfect example. They receive a significant portion of their necessary nutrients precisely through snow and rain. When you actively collect and pile snow on your garden beds, you are mimicking this natural process. You aren't just covering your plants, you are feeding them. This is especially beneficial for crops that require a lot of nitrogen early in their growth cycle, such as cabbage, lettuces, and onions. That's one more compelling reason not to waste the snow, but to carefully pile it where it can do the most good. When discussing impurities in snow, we have to address a common scare, the myth of acid snow that supposedly wipes out all life. Let's separate the facts from the fiction. It's true that industrial areas and major cities release sulfur and nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. When these compounds combine with atmospheric water, they can form acids, leading to acid precipitation, rain, or snow. This is a legitimate environmental issue. However, for the average gardener or homeowner whose property isn't sitting right next to a smoking factory stack, the danger is severely overstated. First off, the concentration of these acids in snow that falls in suburban or rural areas is typically minuscule. It's simply too low to have any measurable negative effect on your soil. Soil has what's called buffering capacity, the natural ability to neutralize small amounts of acid or alkaline substances without dramatically shifting its overall pH level. You would need decades of constant, intense acid precipitation to genuinely damage or acidify garden soil through snowmelt alone. Secondly, even assuming the snow did have slightly elevated acidity for many common garden plants, this would be a benefit, not a drawback. Most of the popular plants we cultivate, such as hydrangeas, rhododendrons, conifers, potatoes, and blueberries, actually prefer slightly acidic soil. For these species, that little bit of acid snow is effectively harmless, perhaps even beneficial. Even plants that prefer alkaline soil, like cabbage, won't suffer any damage from a single exposure to slightly acidic meltwater. The much bigger threat isn't this mythical acidic snow, but the very real dirty snow, which we will discuss later. The snow lying in your garden far from busy roads is essentially clean, beneficial moisture. Fearing its acidity is like refusing to drink fresh spring water just because there might be industrial runoff happening miles downstream. It's vital to keep these distinctions clear. So, feel free to use clean garden snow. Its benefits far outweigh any hypothetical risks related to acidity. This myth often prevents gardeners from utilising a truly valuable natural resource. Okay, so we've established the benefits of snow. Now it's time to take action, specifically strategic snow relocation, or what we might call snow harvesting. The problem is that snow rarely settles evenly across your yard. The wind often sweeps it away from open areas, piling up huge drifts near fences, house walls, and other sheltered spots. This leaves some sections buried under 6 feet of snow, while others are completely bare. Our goal is to fix this imbalance. We need to redistribute the snow to where it's needed most. This is the essence of snow retention and accumulation. Your main tools here are a shovel and common sense. Where should we harvest this snow from? Start with your garden paths and walkways. When clearing them, resist the urge to pile the snow into massive, dense heaps along the sides. Instead, immediately spread it over nearby beds, under shrubs, and around trees. This kills 2 birds with 1 stone. You clear your paths while insulating your plants. You can also gather snow from patios, decks, parking areas, provided they aren't treated with chemicals or salt, or from the roof of your shed or bathhouse. Where should this snow go? Our primary targets are beds containing perennials and late fall plantings. Strawberries, winter garlic, and perennial flowers are priority number 1. Cover these areas with a loose layer of snow, roughly 12 to 16 inches deep. The next important objective is the root zone around your fruit trees and berry bushes. This is especially crucial for young saplings, whose roots haven't yet reached deep down. Build a snowdrift around the base of the trunk at least 1 metre or 3 feet in diameter. This shields the roots from frost and ensures the tree has moisture ready for spring. It's also incredibly useful to shovel snow inside your greenhouse. Many people leave their greenhouses empty and open over the winter. This results in the soil freezing deeply, drying out and losing its structure. If you fill the greenhouse with snow, you'll find moist, loose, living soil inside in the spring, ready for planting much earlier than your outdoor beds. A few key rules to remember. Do not pack the snow down too much, or it will lose its vital insulating properties. Just pile it up in a loose, fluffy layer. Do not use snow from the edges of public roads. It is saturated with salt and chemicals. Finally, start this process with the very first snowfall. Don't wait until the ground is frozen solid. The sooner you establish that snowy winter coat, the less damage your garden will suffer. Beyond just moving snow around, it can be used to create protective barriers against another major winter adversary, the icy wind. Winter wind is dangerous not only because it strips away existing snow cover, it causes what is known as winter desiccation, or winterburn. What exactly is that? Even in freezing winter weather, plants, especially conifers and evergreens, continue to lose moisture through their needles and bark. Meanwhile, their roots are locked in frozen ground and cannot replenish that water loss. Strong winds dramatically accelerate this evaporation process. The result is that the plant literally dries out in the freezing cold. In the spring, you might notice your arbor vitae or juniper has turned yellow or brown only on the windward side. That's the classic sign of winter desiccation damage. To avoid this, we can use snow to create artificial windbreaks. The technique is quite simple. Identify the direction from which winter winds most often blow in your area, usually north or northwest. Then, build an artificial snowdrift or snow wall in front of your most valuable or vulnerable plants. For instance, in front of a group of young conifers, a rose bed, or a patch of rare perennials. This wall needs to be high enough to cover at least half the height of the plants. It will act like a breakwater, disrupting the flow of icy air and creating a still zone of calm behind it. In this protected area, moisture evaporation from the plants will be significantly reduced. Plus, that snow barrier will also help accumulate additional snow that the wind carries, which is a bonus. So with one action, you solve two problems, protecting against the wind and accumulating more insulating snow. This type of barrier is especially effective in open, exposed areas. To make the wall sturdier and longer lasting, you can lightly compact the snow with a shovel. You can even pour a small amount of water over it when it's freezing to create an icy crust on the surface, but only on the surface of the barrier itself, never directly on the plants. This simple technique, often known in northern regions as a snow wall, can save the lives of many of your green companions. It's yet another example of how, with a little ingenuity and just an hour spent with a shovel, you can effectively counteract harsh winter conditions and preserve the beauty of your garden. We often talk about the benefits of snow, but it's crucial to remember that it can also pose a serious threat. We're specifically talking about that heavy, wet snow, the kind that falls during thaws or early spring. Fluffy, powdery snow is incredibly light, but when it starts to melt, it absorbs water, increasing its weight tenfold. While 1 cubic metre of fresh, powdery snow weighs around 50 to 100 kilograms, that same volume of wet, compacted snow can weigh up to 700 or 800 kilograms. Just imagine the incredible stress this puts on the branches of your trees and shrubs. This weight can snap even the thick, healthy branches of fruit trees, not to mention the more fragile stems of ornamental shrubs like arbor vitae, junipers, or hydrangeas. Plants with an upright or columnar form are particularly vulnerable. Snow accumulates in their crotches and can literally split them right down the middle. So, what's the fix? The only sure way is to lend your plants a hand and gently clear the accumulated snow, but this must be done following very specific safety rules for both you and your greenery. First, never shake the snow off during a hard freeze. When it's bitterly cold, branches become extremely brittle, like glass, and your attempt to help will easily break them. This task should only be done during a thaw, when the temperature is near freezing or slightly above. Second, use the right tools. Take a long pole or stick and wrap the end with a soft cloth or foam to avoid damaging the bark. Never use metal shovels or rakes. Third, be gentle. Don't hit or strike the branches. Instead, smoothly tap them from the bottom up, starting with the lowest tiers and gradually working your way toward the top. The snow should fall off naturally under its own weight. Do not try to pull frozen, heavy branches downward. That's a guaranteed way to snap them. For fragile conifers that tend to splay open, it's highly recommended to loosely tie them with twine in the fall. This compact shape prevents snow from accumulating heavily in the centre of the bush. Remember, wet snow is not your friend, it's a structural hazard. Regularly inspecting your yard after heavy snowfalls and promptly removing those dangerous snow caps is a mandatory procedure that will help maintain the health and beautiful form of your trees and shrubs for years to come. Surprisingly, snow cover can actually be a useful tool in pest control. While it's certainly not a magic bullet, it can significantly curb the population of unwanted visitors in your garden. How does this work? The life cycles of many insect pests are intrinsically linked to overwintering. They hibernate in various stages as eggs, larvae, pupae, or adults, and they choose their winter lodgings very carefully. Many of them, such as mice, voles, and the grubs of destructive pests like the May beetle, prefer to overwinter in the topsoil layer or nestled in dry grass and fallen leaves. Their survival strategy relies on the ground freezing solid, allowing them to spend the winter in a state of suspended animation. Now let's consider two scenarios. The first is a snowless winter, characterized by frequent thaws followed by harsh, sudden freezes. The bare ground repeatedly thaws and then refreezes. These temperature swings are devastating to overwintering pests. They wake up during the thaw, deplete their energy reserves, and then perish from the abrupt cold snap. In this case, nature effectively does the dirty work for us. The second scenario is a winter with early and stable snow cover. As we know, under a thick blanket of snow, the temperature remains stable and doesn't drop too low. This creates ideal, comfortable conditions for the dormancy of not only plants, but also, unfortunately, for rodents and soil pests. They thrive in this winter resort, emerging in full force come spring. So, where is the benefit of the snow? The benefit lies in the fact that we can manage this process. For instance, if you know you have a pest problem, like grubs, in a specific garden bed or lawn area, you can deliberately clear the snow away early in the winter, before the permanent cover sets in. Exposing the ground ensures it freezes thoroughly for a period, which helps eradicate a significant portion of the pest population. On the flip side, stable snow cover actually inhibits the survival of pests that overwinter on tree and shrub branches such as aphid eggs. The snow and ice can mechanically damage their egg clusters. Regarding rodents, they feel secure under the snow and can tunnel extensively, often gnawing the bark off young trees. To prevent this, you should clear all grass and debris from the tree wells before winter and periodically pack down the snow around the trunks of young saplings. Dense, compacted snow is much harder for mice to chew through. By understanding how snow impacts pests, we can use it as an active management tool rather than seeing it merely as a passive weather factor. While snow can sometimes create cosy conditions for pests, for the garden's beneficial inhabitants, it's a crucial lifeline, a genuine sanctuary. This world beneath the snow, or the sub-niveal zone as scientists call it, is a complete ecosystem, vibrant and full of life. When that insulating blanket of snow settles on the ground, it creates a unique space between the soil surface and the underside of the snowpack. In this zone, as we've discussed, a stable temperature of around 0 degrees Celsius is maintained, even during the harshest freezes. It's here that countless beneficial creatures find refuge, starting with earthworms. They don't burrow deep into the unfrozen soil below. Instead, they stay in the upper layers, continuing their crucial work of breaking down organic matter. As soon as the snow melts in the spring, they immediately jump back into action, improving soil structure and fertility. Conversely, during snowless winters, when the ground freezes deeply, a significant portion of the earthworm population can perish. Many predatory insects also overwinter beneath the snow. They are our key allies in the fight against pests. Take ground beetles, for instance, and their larvae. They devour slugs, caterpillars, and the eggs of many harmful insects. For them, the sub-niveal zone is a safe haven where they can wait out the cold. Spiders, ladybugs, and other helpful insectivores also shelter in this hidden world, tucking themselves into the fallen leaves and dry grass covered by the insulating snow. Furthermore, life continues beneath the snow for soil microorganisms. The bacteria and fungi responsible for decomposing organic debris and turning it into plant-available nutrients don't stop working entirely. Their activity slows down significantly, but it doesn't cease completely, as it would in ground that has frozen solid. This means that by spring, your soil emerges healthier, more vibrant and richer in nutrients. By building up and preserving snow cover in your garden beds and throughout your yard, you aren't just insulating plant roots. You are actively caring for an entire unseen army of helpers. You are providing them a secure home and winter protection. And in the spring, they will repay you by working actively to create a healthy, balanced ecosystem on your property, one that is naturally more resistant to disease and pests. This is a vital, long-term investment in the overall health of your garden. Every rose has its thorn, and when it comes to snow cover, there is always a catch. This downside has a name: snow mold, also known as Typhoula blight. This is a fungal disease that develops under specific conditions, primarily right beneath the snow. Lawns are the most common victims, but it can also attack perennial plants like strawberries or winter crops. So, what exactly is it? Snow mold is a fungus that thrives in conditions of near freezing temperatures, high humidity, and zero light. These are precisely the conditions created under a thick, dense blanket of snow, especially in the spring when the thaw is slow. Once the snow melts, you might spot patches on your lawn or garden beds where the grass or leaves look matted, glued together, and covered in a cobweb-like substance that is typically grey, pink, or white. This is the fungal mycelium. In mild cases, plants bounce back, but severe infections can wipe out entire sections of turf or crops. Rubber wool. What causes snow mold? What factors contribute to snow mold development? First up, premature snow cover falling on ground that has not frozen yet. This creates a warm, moist incubator where the fungi can thrive. Second, excessively deep and dense snow that lingers too long in the spring. This traps moisture beneath the surface, causing air stagnation and excess humidity. Finally, leaving long, uncut grass on the lawn or uncleaned plant debris in garden beds. These organic remnants act as a perfect food source for the mold. Prevention and treatment. How do we fight this, and more importantly, how do we prevent it? Prevention is the key to success. In the fall, make sure you perform a final mowing of the lawn, but do not cut it too short. Clear all fallen leaves and clippings from the area. Aerate your lawn. Using a garden fork or aerator to poke holes in the turf will improve air access to the roots. Crucially, apply a potassium and phosphorus-rich fertilizer in the autumn. This strengthens the plant's immunity and increases their resistance to fungal diseases. This is the opposite of nitrogen fertilizers, which tend to make plant tissues soft and vulnerable. In the spring, as soon as the snow starts to melt, try to accelerate the process in any problem areas. You can spread ash or peat moss on top of the snow. These darker particles will absorb solar heat, speeding up the melt. Once the snow is gone, gently rake the affected patches with a leaf or dethatching rake. This helps break up the mold structure, the mycelium, and allows for better air circulation. These steps are usually enough to help the lawn and other plants recover. There's another fascinating and rather clever technique involving snow, particularly useful in regions prone to late spring frosts. It involves using snow to artificially delay the blooming of fruit trees and bushes. Many gardeners have faced that frustrating scenario. Apricots, plums, or early apple varieties burst into full bloom during warm April weather, only for a sudden nighttime frost to completely wipe out the potential harvest. Flowers and young fruit sets are extremely vulnerable to freezing temperatures. How do we prevent this? The key is to trick the tree into waking up and blooming a week or two later, after the danger of harsh frosts has passed. And once again, snow is the answer. How exactly does this work? The tree gets the signal to break dormancy and begins sap flow from its root system. As long as the roots are sitting in cold frozen ground, the tree remains dormant. Once the soil in the basal area starts to warm up, the roots rapidly draw up water and the tree awakens. Our goal is to keep the soil around the roots cold for as long as possible. To achieve this throughout the winter, we need to create the largest, most compact snow pile possible around the tree trunk. We should shovel snow from walkways, pathways, and the rest of the yard. Ideally, this mound should be at least as wide as the tree's canopy. To ensure this mound melts as slowly as possible in the spring, we need to insulate it. Once the snowdrift is fully formed, cover the top with a thick layer of mulch, such as sawdust, peat moss, straw, or even old boards and cardboard. This mulching layer acts like a thermos, reflecting solar rays and preventing the snow from melting quickly. Consequently, while the rest of your garden is snow-free and the earth is warming up, a solid block of ice will remain beneath your insulated mound, keeping the soil chilled. The tree's roots stay cold, delaying its natural awakening. This trick can push the start of blooming by 7 to 10, and sometimes up to 14 days. This delay is usually enough time to safely bypass the period of the most dangerous frosts. This method is particularly effective for stone fruits like cherries, plums, and apricots, which tend to bloom exceptionally early. It is crucial to remember, however, to use this strategy judiciously. You don't want to delay dormancy for too long. Therefore, as soon as the major threat of frost has definitely passed, you must remove the insulating layer so the snowdrift melts faster and the tree can begin its vegetative cycle. Snow isn't just useful for protecting existing plants, it's an incredible tool for starting new ones. We're talking about the method known as winter sowing, where snow is actually the key ingredient. This technique is perfect for many cold-hardy annuals, perennials, and vegetables. The core idea is simple. Instead of waiting for spring, you sow seeds late in the fall on frozen ground, or even in the middle of winter, directly onto the snow. Why bother? First, it saves you precious time in the spring when you're already busy. Second, and most important, the seeds undergo natural cold stratification, the chilling process necessary to wake many species up. The result? Seedlings that are much stronger, healthier, and already hardened off. How is this done? For dedicated winter sowing, you'll need containers with drainage holes filled with potting mix. Sprinkle the seeds lightly over the surface, press them in gently, but do not cover them with soil. Then place these containers outside in a sheltered, wind-free spot and cover them with a thick layer of snow. Snow performs several crucial tasks here. It protects the seeds from birds and prevents them from drying out. In the spring, it melts slowly, providing the perfect source of clean, soft meltwater for germination. This water gradually soaks into the soil, gently pulling the seeds down to the perfect depth. It completely mimics the natural process. What can you sow this way? For flowers, try Aquilegia, columbine, delphinium, lavender, primrose, and many types of campanula, bellflower. For vegetables, focus on cold hardy varieties like spinach, lettuce, arugula, dill, carrots and parsnips. There's also a second option, direct sowing right onto the garden bed snow cover. In February or early March, while the snow is still deep, head out to your garden, lightly tamp down the snow on the desired bed, and scatter the seeds directly onto the surface. Dark seeds are clearly visible against the white background, making it easy to ensure even distribution. You can then sprinkle a thin layer of peat or compost over the top. The sun warms these dark particles, melting the snow underneath, and the seeds, carried by the meltwater, gently sink down to the soil surface. Once all the snow is gone, they'll be perfectly nestled in moist, loose soil at the correct depth. This method is fantastic for small seeded crops and ensures you get a super early harvest of greens. It's a simple yet highly effective gardening hack that lets you harness the power of nature for your own benefit. We've touched upon this briefly before, but this mistake is so widespread and dangerous that it warrants a separate, detailed discussion. We are talking about using dirty snow collected from roads and sidewalks to mulch or cover garden plants. This is one of the most destructive things you can do to your garden. Why is it so risky? At first glance, it seems logical. Here is readily available snow that has already been cleared. Just take it and use it. But this snow is actually a toxic cocktail. First, and most importantly, it contains massive amounts of de-icing agents. Most often, this is standard road salt, sodium chloride, as well as newer, but still harmful, calcium and magnesium compounds. When these salts enter the soil, they cause immediate salinization. They destroy the soil structure, making it dense and compact. But the worst part is the high osmotic pressure they create in the soil solution. This prevents plant roots from absorbing water. The plant sits in moist soil but effectively dies of thirst. This is known as physiological drought. Leaves yellow, wilt, and the plant eventually perishes. The excess chlorine and sodium are highly toxic to most plants, causing root burn and poisoning the entire organism. Secondly, road snow absorbs the entire periodic table from vehicle exhaust. This includes heavy metals like lead, cadmium, and zinc, as well as soot, asphalt, and tyre particles, and residual oil and gasoline. All these substances are known carcinogens and poisons. Accumulating in the soil, they don't just poison your plants, They can also enter the fruits and vegetables and ultimately end up on your dinner table. You're essentially turning your supposedly organic garden into a toxic landfill with your own hands. Never, under any circumstances, gather snow from road shoulders, even if it's just a dirt road in your rural community. Avoid snow from city streets entirely. The only snow you should ever use in your garden is clean snow that has fallen directly onto your property, from the lawn, from a roof, provided it hasn't been treated with chemicals, or from unused areas. Remember this rule as an absolute axiom. It is better to leave your garden beds bare than to cover them with a poisonous snowdrift from the street. The consequences of such care can be irreversible and may take many years to restore the health of your soil. Let's turn our attention to the lawn. For many homeowners and gardeners, a well-maintained lawn is a source of pride, so understanding how it survives the winter under a blanket of snow is crucial. When it comes to the lawn, snow is truly a double-edged sword. On one hand, snow cover is extremely beneficial. It acts as an insulator, protecting the grass crowns and root system from freezing, especially during harsh, bare winters. It also locks in moisture, preventing the turf from drying out during the cold months. In spring, the melting snow provides the essential hydration needed for a quick, robust start. It sounds like all positives, right? But there are some serious risks involved. The first and perhaps greatest danger is snow mold, or typhola. Dense turf, especially if it was over-fertilised with nitrogen late in the fall, creates the perfect breeding ground for this fungal disease beneath the snowpack. Prevention is key here. Ensure a final low autumn cut, clear away all leaf debris, and apply a potassium-heavy fertiliser before winter sets in. The second risk is the formation of an ice crust or glaze. This ice layer can form for various reasons. Sudden thaws followed by hard freezes, freezing rain, or most often, repeated foot traffic that compacts the snow. A dense sheet of ice lying directly on the grass effectively blocks air circulation. Trapped underneath, the grass starts to suffocate and rot, a phenomenon sometimes called winter kill. If this ice sheet remains for several weeks, the lawn can be severely damaged, or even die off completely. What should you do if this happens? You must break up the ice crust. You can achieve this using a garden fork, rakes, or simply a long stick. Carefully poke as many aeration holes into the ice as possible to allow air to reach the turf below. You don't need to chip away all the ice. Just breaking up its integrity is enough. The third risk is mechanical damage and compaction. When your yard is covered in snow, it's tempting to cut a path straight across the lawn, use it as a makeshift skating rink, or dump large piles of snow cleared from the driveway onto it. This is strictly prohibited. Heavily compacted snow leads to suffocation and rot beneath. In the spring, those winter trails will leave ugly brown or yellow strips that take a long time to recover. Therefore, the lawn needs to enter a state of peaceful dormancy for the winter. Avoid walking on it when it's covered in snow. The snow should remain a loose, undisturbed layer. Let's take another look at snow's most critical function, thermoregulation, but examine it from a slightly different perspective. Snow doesn't just insulate, it smooths out temperature peaks, essentially acting as climate control for your garden. Plants, especially perennials, really struggle with sharp temperature swings. Consider a typical scenario in temperate zones during late winter or early spring. You might have a severe frost at night, say 5 or 0 degrees Fahrenheit, but then the intense daytime sun can warm up tree bark and the soil surface above freezing. These drastic temperature shifts lead to 2 serious issues. The first is frost cracking, or sun-scald cracking, on tree trunks. During the day, the dark bark on the south or southwest side of the trunk heats up intensely from the sun and expands. At night, it rapidly cools and contracts. This differential heating between the inner and outer wood creates enormous stress, literally tearing the bark and underlying wood. These deep, vertical cracks, known as frost cracks, become open gateways for pests and diseases. The second issue is winter burn or sun scorch on evergreens. The bright spring sun reflects off the snow and hits the needles. The foliage starts actively transpiring, losing moisture, but the roots are still locked in frozen ground and cannot supply water. As a result, the needles essentially burn out, turning yellow or brown and eventually dropping. How does snow help mitigate these problems? First, regarding deciduous trees. If you whitewash trunks in the fall, the white surface reflects sunlight and prevents the bark from overheating. If you then mound a high snowdrift around the base of the trunk, it further stabilizes the temperature in the most vulnerable area, the root flare. The snow prevents the soil and lower trunk from rapidly thawing and refreezing. When it comes to evergreens, snow plays a dual role. On the one hand, its reflective quality intensifies the sun and worsens the scorch. On the other hand, if a young or short evergreen is completely buried by snow, it is in ideal conditions, dark, cool, and moist, and is completely protected from sun scorch. For taller plants, the best defense is physical shading, using burlap or specialized screening material, but even here, snow contributes significantly. A thick layer of snow under the plant takes longer to melt, which means the soil thaws more slowly. This delays the awakening of the root system and synchronizes it with the crown's emergence, greatly reducing the risk of desiccation. By managing our snow cover, we can effectively protect our plants from the harsh spring sun and unpredictable temperature shifts. One of the most common questions gardeners ask is, how much snow is enough for effective winter protection? What depth of snow cover is truly sufficient? While there is no single answer that fits every situation, we do have general guidelines. It is generally accepted that every centimetre of snow cover increases the temperature at the soil surface by approximately 1 degree Celsius. Therefore, a layer of 10 centimetres already makes a noticeable difference and can save plants from dying during mild frosts, down to about -10 to -15 degrees Celsius. However, for reliable protection in harsh winter conditions, where temperatures drop below 25 degrees Celsius, you'll want a snow layer of at least 25 to 30 centimetres. And for particularly delicate plants, such as roses or grapes, it is recommended to build snowdrifts up to 50 or 60 centimetres high. It's important to remember that not only the depth, but also the density of the snow matters. Freshly fallen, fluffy snow has the best thermal insulation properties. As snow settles, compacts, or develops an icy crust, its effectiveness decreases. Therefore, if possible, occasionally fluffing up the snow on your garden beds can be highly beneficial. But what if you face a low snow winter? This is a serious problem, and it requires proactive measures. First, you need to capture and conserve literally every snowflake. Install snow fences or barriers. These can be sheets of plywood, corrugated panels, or polycarbonate material, staked into the ground on the windward side of your beds. Branches of fir boughs or cut stems of perennial plants laid on the beds also work excellently to trap snow. Second, utilize every available snow source on your property. Carefully gather snow from pathways, patios and roofs and move it to your most valuable plantings. Third, if there is a catastrophic lack of snow, you will have to resort to alternative insulation methods. This includes mulching with a thick layer of peat, compost, fallen leaves or straw. You can also use covering materials like horticultural fleece or row covers stretched over hoops. However, keep in mind that none of these materials can fully replace the unique properties of snow, especially its vital role in providing moisture when the spring thaw arrives. Therefore, during low snow winters, be prepared for the fact that your plants will require generous watering in the spring. Finally, a low snow winter should prompt you to consider choosing more frost-resistant and drought-tolerant plant varieties for your garden. Cultivars specifically adapted to your local climate. A lot of gardeners grow plants in pots and containers, everything from ornamental conifers and perennial flowers to small fruit trees. The big question arises in winter: what do we do with them? Leaving them outdoors is risky. Unlike soil in the open ground, the root ball in a pot freezes solid, and it happens very quickly. In these conditions, the roots are almost guaranteed to die. Should we bring everything inside? Not everyone has the space, and besides, many plants need a period of cold dormancy for healthy development. The ideal solution is to bury the containers directly in the garden soil. But if you didn't manage to do that, or simply chose not to, snow can come to the rescue. You can set up a specialised winter storage area for your container plants right in your yard. Choose a spot sheltered from wind and sun, for example, near the north wall of your house or shed. Gather all your containers together and arrange them tightly, touching each other. This reduces the surface area exposed to freezing for each individual pot. Next, you need to build a protective box or frame around this group of containers using planks, plywood, or even heavy cardboard. The space between the walls of the box and the pots should be filled with insulating material, such as dry leaves, sawdust, peat, or even crumpled newspaper. Finally, cover the entire structure with snow. Build the biggest drift you can manage, completely burying both the containers and the insulating frame. The snow acts as the main thermal insulator. Under this deep covering, the temperature inside the root ball won't drop to critical levels. Your plants will remain safely dormant in stable, secure conditions. One crucial point: in the spring, make sure that meltwater doesn't pool inside the snowdrift. You must ensure proper drainage to prevent the roots from rotting. This method allows you to successfully overwinter even rather delicate container plants without needing a heated greenhouse or a cold basement. Essentially, you are creating an artificial snowdrift refrigerator that protects your cherished plants until spring. The most important thing is not to forget to dismantle this setup promptly in the spring, preventing the plants from overheating and rotting once the weather warms up significantly. If you want to approach snow management systematically and professionally, you should consider implementing a proper snow fence system, often referred to as a snow barrier or snow hedge. This is particularly crucial for large, exposed, and windy sites where snow is constantly drifting. A snow fence is a straightforward structure installed perpendicular to the prevailing winter winds. Its purpose is to force the wind to deposit the snow it is carrying, creating a substantial snowdrift on the downwind side. How does this mechanism work? When a stream of air encounters an obstacle, it slows down rapidly. As the air loses velocity, it can no longer suspend the snowflakes, causing them to drop to the ground. Crucially, the largest accumulation of snow occurs not immediately in front of the barrier, but behind it, at a distance several times greater than the fence's height. The simplest version of a snow fence is merely a row of wooden stakes driven into the ground, often with specialised netting, or even just several rows of wire strung between them, which can be used to anchor branches or evergreen boughs. A more robust construction involves using slatted wooden panels, where boards are nailed to posts with precise intervals. It is vital that the barrier is not solid. Instead, it must have gaps, or porosity, ideally comprising around 50% of the total surface area. These semi-porous, slatted barriers are the most effective, as they create the required air turbulence and ensure the snow settles exactly where you want it. Where should you install this system? Position the fence on the windward side of the area you intend to cover with snow. For instance, if you want to accumulate snow over a strawberry plantation, you should install the barrier 15 to 20 metres upwind from it. Throughout the winter, this shield will generate an enormous snowdrift, which will reliably insulate your crops. Snow fences are also utilised to protect roadways from drifts, or they can be placed in front of a greenhouse to stockpile snow for later use inside. While implementing this system requires some effort in the autumn, the payoff is substantial. You eliminate your dependence on unpredictable winds and gain the power to manage snow distribution across your landscape. This moves beyond simple gardening. It's a form of environmental engineering and landscape design focused on maximising the benefits of natural resources. In the long run, this investment translates directly into healthier plants and reliably higher yields. Snow isn't just a nuisance or a winter spectacle. It's a valuable source of information about your garden plot. By observing how the snow settles and how it melts in the spring, you can learn a surprising amount about the microclimate, terrain, and soil condition across different parts of your yard. Think of it as a detailed map. You just need to know how to read it. The first thing to focus on during winter is the distribution of the snow cover. Areas where the wind constantly sweeps the snow away are the coldest and harshest zones, making them poor choices for overwintering delicate plants. Conversely, where natural drifts accumulate, you have the warmest and most protected corners. This knowledge is crucial for future planting plans, allowing you to position more sensitive or demanding plants in those sheltered spots. The second, and perhaps most insightful, observation comes in spring, the pattern of snow melting. Spots where the snow disappears first are the warmest and sunniest locations in your garden. The soil here warms up much earlier than elsewhere. These are the ideal spots for establishing beds for the earliest vegetables and greens, and for planting heat-loving crops. Conversely, the areas where snow lingers the longest are the coldest and shadiest zones. They are unsuitable for early planting because the ground remains cold and waterlogged for an extended time. However, these spots are perfect for plants that dislike heat and intense sunlight, such as hostas or astilbes. The rate of melting can also tell you about your soil composition. Snow disappears sooner on light, sandy soils that warm up quickly, but it remains longer on heavy, clay soils that retain cold. Patches of bare ground appearing in specific spots might indicate the presence of warmer groundwater rising to the surface, or even underground utility lines. Finally, if you notice the snow around a tree trunk has melted in a neat circle, that's a positive sign. It means the tree is alive and breathing. Its trunk generates slight warmth, which is enough to melt the surrounding snow. By carefully observing the snow, you can create a detailed, accurate map of your plot's microclimate zones without needing any specialized equipment. This information is invaluable for intelligent planning and will help you avoid costly mistakes when placing your plants. There is a specific category of plants where snow is not merely helpful, but an absolute necessity, essentially woven into their genetic code. We are talking about true alpines and the inhabitants of rock gardens, commonly known as rockeries. These plants originate in high-altitude regions where the climate is extremely harsh, short summers, intense winds, and long, snowy winters. Over millennia of evolution, they have perfectly adapted to thrive under these exact conditions. In the mountains, the blanket of snow performs several vital functions for these plants. First, it offers protection against extreme frost. At great heights, temperatures plummet, but under a thick layer of snow, the plants remain safe and perfectly insulated. Second, snow protects them from drying winds and intense sun. High mountain areas have incredibly intense solar radiation, and without a protective snowy blanket, evergreen alpines like sempervivums, saxifrages, or certain sedums would simply scorch or burn up. The snow shields them from these damaging rays. Third, it acts as a vital source of moisture. In the spring, the melting mountain snow provides the plants with the perfect amount of pure, vital meltwater, ensuring a rapid start to their growing season. Since the high-altitude summer is short, they must quickly grow, flower, and set seed in a very limited time frame. Therefore, when you are designing a rockery or an alpine garden in your yard, you must try your best to replicate their native environment. And the most crucial requirement is reliable snow cover throughout the winter months. If your rock garden is sited in an exposed, windy location where snow is easily swept away, the plants will suffer significantly and are likely to perish. Your job is to ensure they have a consistent, insulating blanket of snow. You can achieve this by installing small snow fences or by laying down evergreen boughs or branches across the rockery to catch and anchor the falling snow. If you experience a winter with minimal natural snowfall, you might even have to manually move snow onto the alpine bed, collecting it from other parts of your garden. Without this snow cover, many alpine plants simply cannot survive winter in our climate, even if they are rated as being highly cold hardy. They don't mind the extreme cold, but they crucially need the stable, consistent environment that the snow provides. This highlights how vital it is to understand the origin and native habits of your plants if you want to ensure they receive the proper care. Let's pause for a moment and look at a slightly unconventional, yet surprisingly practical way to use snow around the yard or garden. Can you actually use snow to clean garden tools? It sounds absurd at first, but hear me out. There's actually some logic to it. Now, obviously, snow won't replace a thorough wash using water, a brush, and disinfectants. However, it can be a fantastic method for pre-cleaning. Picture this scenario. You've been working in the garden late in the fall, and the soil is wet and sticky. Your spades, forks, and hoes are covered in a thick layer of caked-on muck. If you leave them that way over the winter, the mud will dry hard as a rock, making it extremely difficult to scrape off come springtime. Instead, what if right after you finish, while the mud is still wet, you take your tool and give it a good scrubbing against clean, dry, powdery snow? Snow acts like a gentle abrasive. Its crystals effectively scrub off the stuck-on soil without scratching the metal surface. You simply plunge the shovel into the snowdrift a few times, scrape it on all sides, and most of the grime is left behind in the snow. The tool is immediately much cleaner. Following this initial pre-clean, it's much easier to give it a final wash, wipe it dry, and put it away for proper storage. This method is especially handy when you don't have immediate access to water. Say, if you are at the far end of a large property, or if your outdoor water supply has already been shut off for the season. It's crucial to use clean, freshly fallen snow, not old, slushy, or dirty snow. Now, this isn't some revolutionary farming technique, it's just a simple garden life hack, but it highlights how snow can be utilised for practical household chores, not just for the plants themselves. It demonstrates the principle of resourcefulness and making the most of the free resources nature provides. Plus, it's actually a rather meditative activity, cleaning your tools with crunchy snow in the quiet winter landscape. It's one more way to feel connected to nature and its cycles. So next time you are putting away dirty equipment, take a look at the nearest snowdrift. It might just be your free, eco-friendly pressure washer for a quick pre-rinse. We've previously discussed how compacting snow over plants is generally counterproductive because it reduces the insulation qualities. Walking on a snowy lawn is also damaging. However, there are specific scenarios where tamping down or compacting snow can be beneficial, sometimes even necessary. As with everything in gardening, context and purpose are key. So when is snow compaction justified? The main reason is pest control, specifically rodent management. Mice and voles are a major headache for gardeners in the winter. Under light, fluffy snow, they are in paradise. They create vast networks of tunnels, completely safe from predators, and they feed on the bark of young fruit trees. Apples, pears, and plums are especially vulnerable. Rodents can completely girdle the tree, chewing the bark all the way around the base, which inevitably kills the plant. To prevent this, you need to periodically tramp the snow down around the base of young trees. After every heavy snowfall, walk through the garden and use your feet to firmly compact the snow around the trunks. Dense, compacted snow or ice crust is much harder for mice to chew through. It effectively blocks their path to the trunk. This simple action can save your young orchard. The second useful application of tamping is creating those sturdy snow windbreaks we've mentioned. A slightly compacted snow barrier or mound will be much stronger and better equipped to withstand high winds. The third scenario involves slowing the melt. If you build a large snowdrift around the base of a fruit tree specifically to delay its spring blooming, compacting that drift helps it last longer. Dense snow has greater thermal mass and melts significantly slower than loose, fluffy snow. However, it is crucial to remember where you absolutely must not compact snow. Never tramp snow down over strawberry beds, winter garlic, or perennial flowers. Under a dense layer, these plants will suffocate and begin to rot due to a lack of air circulation. And of course, never compact the snow on your lawn. This will kill the grass. The rule is simple. You can and should compact snow only where there are no dormant green plants underneath, and where the primary goal is to create a physical barrier for rodents or to slow down the thawing process. In all other cases, the snow should remain loose and airy, acting like a down comforter. Understanding this difference is the key to smart snow management in the garden. Snow plays a key role in another important biological process known as vernalization. This is a physiological requirement for many plants, a long, sustained period of chilling, so they can flower and bear fruit successfully. Without this essential cold treatment, their life cycle will be completely disrupted. Many fruit trees we cultivate in temperate climates, like apples, pears, cherries and plums, require a specific number of chilling hours, typically below 7 degrees Celsius during the winter. If the winter is abnormally warm and they don't meet this cold quota, they may either fail to flower entirely in the spring, or their bloom will be weak and sparse. This applies equally to many berry bushes such as currants and gooseberries. Snow cover helps provide the ideal environment for vernalization. It stabilizes the temperature of the soil and the air layer just above the ground at the optimal level for this process, right around freezing. Crucially, it prevents plants from waking up prematurely during winter thaws, which would effectively reset the chilling hours they have already accumulated. It also ensures a smooth and gradual transition out of dormancy in the spring. This process isn't just critical for trees and shrubs. Many bulb flowers like tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, and crocuses also need a cold period to form their flower buds. That's why we plant them in the fall. Wintering beneath the snow in cold ground allows them to undergo vernalization. If you try to grow a tulip indoors in a pot at room temperature without giving it that chilling period, it will most likely produce only leaves and fail to flower. Even some vegetables such as fall-planted garlic require vernalization. If planted in the spring, garlic often fails to form a proper bulb, producing only a single, undivided clove. But after spending the winter under the snow, it completes the necessary cooling stage and forms a large, segmented bulb. Therefore, a snowy winter isn't just a dormant period. It is an active and essential phase in the life cycle of many plants. By ensuring a reliable snow cover, we help them correctly navigate every stage of their annual cycle, guaranteeing ourselves abundant flowering and a good harvest the following season. Let's try to evaluate the benefits of snow, not just from an agricultural standpoint, but also from an economic one. Properly managing snow can lead to substantial financial benefits by saving you money in several expense categories. The first and most obvious savings category is irrigation water. As we've discussed, a heavy blanket of snow creates a huge moisture reserve in the soil, often lasting throughout the spring and sometimes even into early summer. Just imagine how many gallons or cubic meters of water you would have to apply to your land to achieve the same deep, even soaking. Given current water rates, especially if you rely on municipal services rather than a private well, the savings could amount to hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars per season. Snow does this work entirely for free. The second category is fertilizer. We mentioned that snow delivers nitrogen and other micronutrients straight from the atmosphere. While this won't replace a full feeding schedule, it certainly lets you cut back on the quantity you use. For instance, you can safely reduce your initial spring dose of nitrogen fertilizer because your plants have already received a starter supply from the meltwater. This saves you money on the fertilizer itself and saves you the time spent applying it. The third area of savings is soil improvement. Snow naturally aerates heavy soils, boosting their overall structure. This means you can save money on buying and incorporating soil amendments like sand, peat, or vermiculite. In the long run, healthy, well-structured soil requires less tilling and preparation, which translates into saved effort and reduced costs for using and fueling your rototiller. The fourth and perhaps most crucial savings category is plant preservation. Every rosebush, every young fruit tree that dies from freeze damage represents a direct financial loss. You have to buy a replacement sapling, spend time planting it, and then wait several years for it to mature. A reliable blanket of snow acts as insurance for your garden investment. Just multiply the cost of one sapling by the number of plants you might lose during a harsh, snowless winter, and you'll arrive at a very considerable sum. If we add up all these factors, it becomes clear that snow is a valuable economic asset. By treating it carefully and using it wisely, you aren't just boosting your harvest, you are directly saving money in your household budget. This is a perfect example where the most effective solutions are the ones provided by nature itself, and they happen to be the most cost-effective too. The agricultural benefits of snow have been understood for millennia. Our ancestors, without formal scientific knowledge of soil physics or chemistry, understood the immense value of snow cover through intuition and centuries of practical observation. This wisdom is reflected in countless proverbs and sayings passed down to us. Phrases like, "Lots of snow means lots of grain," "Snow in the fields means bread in the barns," or "A winter without snow means a summer without harvest." These sayings aren't merely folklore. They represent the pure essence, or the quintessence, of agronomic wisdom. Farmers knew that a snowy winter guaranteed a bountiful grain harvest. They observed that the snow cover protected winter crops from freezing and ensured strong, uniform sprouts in the spring. They also noticed that the melting snow left the soil soft, moist, and much easier to work. Even then, people practiced primitive snow retention techniques. They would deliberately leave uncut strips of stubble in the fields to act as snow fences, and they would pile up snowdrifts around fruit trees in their orchards. There were also specific omens. A good harvest was predicted if the first snowfall landed on moist ground. This makes sense, as damp soil under snow doesn't freeze as deeply. Conversely, snow falling on dry, already frozen earth was considered a bad sign. The use of snow extended to other areas as well. For example, it was used as a natural refrigerator to store food. Melted snow water was often considered medicinal, used for drinking, washing, and even treating minor illnesses. While we certainly wouldn't drink from a snowdrift in the garden today, the sheer reverence our ancestors held for meltwater is telling. By studying this historical experience, we realize that modern agricultural techniques are often just the scientific justification for what our ancestors already understood practically. Their observations of nature were incredibly accurate. They lived in harmony with natural cycles and knew how to leverage them to their advantage. And today, when we shovel snow onto a strawberry patch, we are essentially doing the exact same thing our great-great-grandfathers did on their farms. We are continuing this centuries-old tradition of sensible farming, one based on cooperating with nature rather than struggling against it. This time-tested knowledge is our most valuable heritage. Looking ahead, we have to talk about climate change and its impact on snow cover. Scientists predict that winters in many regions are becoming increasingly unstable and unpredictable. We might face periods of unusually warm weather right in the middle of winter, or extreme freezes with little or no snow at all. What does this mean for us as gardeners, and how do we adapt our strategies? Firstly, the role of active snow management, or snow retention, is growing. We used to rely on snow to just fall and stay all winter, but now we have to be ready to actively secure it, catching and holding every snowflake using barriers, screens, or windbreaks. Secondly, the importance of mulching and other non-snow winter covers increases dramatically. In some winters, we might have to cover vulnerable plants, like roses or grapes, using pine boughs, horticultural fleece, or other materials because we simply can't rely on snow for insulation. We need to master and combine various protection methods. Thirdly, our approach to plant selection is changing. We should prioritise locally adapted and proven varieties that are highly suited to the specific temperament of our local climate. It might be necessary to stop growing some especially tender or heat-loving crops directly in the ground, moving them instead into containers or greenhouses. On the flip side, a warmer climate does open up new possibilities. It might become feasible to grow plants that simply couldn't survive our climate before. But even here, we must remain cautious, as those freak extreme freezes are still a major threat. Another major problem with unstable winters is the frequent thaws, which trigger plants to wake up prematurely. This is exactly where cold retention techniques can help, such as banking up large, insulated snow piles around trees to delay their growth as much as possible. In any case, the future of gardening relies on flexibility, vigilance, and a willingness to experiment. We will have to follow weather forecasts more closely, study new agricultural techniques, and constantly adapt to changing conditions. The gardener's role is becoming far more active. We can no longer just plant something and hope for the best. We need to become true managers of our garden's ecosystem, helping it cope with these new challenges. And in these conditions, knowing how to properly manage snow becomes more critical and valuable than ever. And to conclude our detailed discussion, let's put together a concise final checklist, your essential action plan for winter snow management. Think of this as the condensed takeaway from everything we've talked about today. Point 1. Fall preparation. Don't leave plant debris on garden beds or the lawn. If autumn has been dry, conduct a deep soak or moisture retention watering. Install snow fencing or windbreaks in open areas. Tie up or wrap fragile evergreens. Trips. Point 2. The first snowfall. As soon as the first lasting snow arrives, start redistributing it. Prioritise covering strawberry patches, winter garlic, late sown seeds, and your most sensitive perennials. Point 3. Routine. Maintenance. After every snowfall, clear pathways and toss the snow under trees and shrubs. Build up and maintain high snow mounds around the base of young trees. And don't forget to shovel some snow into your greenhouse. Point 4. Rodent control. Regularly tamp down the snow around the trunks of young fruit trees. This creates a dense barrier so mice and voles can't tunnel underneath and chew the bark. Point 5. Protection from heavy snow. During thaws, monitor branches for heavy, wet snow build-up. Carefully use a long pole to gently shake it off and prevent breakage. Takish spendandos. Point 6. Controlling ice crusts. If a dense, icy crust forms on your lawn or garden beds, break it up using a pitchfork or a stick. This ensures essential airflow reaches your dormant plants. Point 7. Spring work. As soon as the sun starts to warm things up, you can speed up the snow melt on beds where you plan early plantings by dusting the snow with ash or peat moss. Conversely, if you want to delay the blooming of certain trees, you can insulate those snow mounds with an extra layer of sawdust. Trapam. Point 8. The golden rule. Never use dirty snow contaminated with salt and chemicals from roads to cover your plants. This is an absolute taboo. By following this simple plan, you can utilise snow to its maximum benefit and avoid all the common pitfalls. Your garden will reward this care with health and an abundant harvest. Snow isn't a problem to be endured, but a resource you must learn to manage. And now you know exactly how to do it. And just like that, step by step, we've walked through this seemingly simple topic. But wow, what a deep and multifaceted world is hidden beneath a regular snowfall. We found out that snow is actually an insulator, a natural irrigation system, a source of fertilizer, and even a tool for managing pests and controlling bloom times. The most critical takeaway here is that in nature, absolutely nothing is wasted. Every snowdrift in your yard isn't just frozen water. It's your potential harvest, free medicine for your soil, and a powerful ally in the fight for a healthy garden. We debunked the myth of acid snow, yet highlighted the real danger of using snow shoveled off roads. We learned exactly when snow needs to be compacted, and conversely when it's vital to keep it light and fluffy. So the next time you see snow falling outside, don't automatically groan about having to grab the shovel again. Instead, look at it as a free delivery of the most valuable winter resource, dropped right on your doorstep. You are no longer just a homeowner. You are the dedicated manager of a natural fertility reserve. Your smart, informed decisions will determine whether this reserve brings blessing or harm to your land. Thank you so much for sticking with this long, but hopefully helpful video until the end. If you learned even one new thing today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future gardening secrets. Your support truly means the world to us. And now, a question for you. How do you use snow in your yard or garden? Maybe you have a family secret or an unusual life hack that I didn't mention. Please share your invaluable experience in the comments below. Let's put together the most complete encyclopedia of snowy agro techniques together. Until next time.